I would argue that a battle is truly won or lost even before a finger is lifted. A certain line of thought believes that ideas are not of our own. We're passed them onto us to make the most out of them while we still have them. So from Don E. Hamachek, who wrote the book that inspired this talk, to me, and now to you, my audience, I would like to pass a new vantage on your own identity and how you can approach challenges in your life. Don E. Hamachek defines the self as how we express our personalities, ideas and beliefs about our relative value and ultimate worth. And so, this introduces the first way in which our perspective is molded. Whatever expectations people have of us, and even ourselves, whatever expectations we have of ourselves. To some, I'm a son, and so I not only think, but also behave like a son. To others, I'm a friend, and so on. The second way in which our perspective is molded is through the already pre-existing social norms that were there around us even before we had our own. Now picture this, two friends driving, one on the driver's seat, another one on the passenger seat. Now a big brown boulder, about 2 meters wide, stumbles onto the road path. The passenger, confused why isn't the driver trying to steer away, grabs onto the steering wheel, trying to redirect the vehicle. The driver, also confused by the passenger's behavior, also grabs strong hold of the steering wheel. Now this interaction makes so much more sense once you realize that the driver was from the west and his passenger from the east, who had never seen a tumbleweed before. Now, the passenger wasn't wrong for trying to steer away the vehicle. He just applied a perspective, an inappropriate perspective on the situation. Rather, his perspective and understanding was challenged by his friend from the west. This introduces an important topic in my discussion. How then does the mind react when challenged by a situation or even other individuals? Hamachek notes on the mechanisms that the mind uses against such challenges. He calls them the mechanisms to defend the self. And the first one I'd like to talk about is denial of reality. Denial of reality, to put it simply, is when our mind fails to acknowledge our shortcomings or fails to acknowledge problems. Hamachek notes on one of his patients, a mother whose 10-year-old child was diagnosed by multiple experts of severe brain damage. The mother would remark how simply her child failed or developed slower than other children. To her, to the mother, the reality of the sickness of her child was too unpleasant for her to accept it and acknowledge it, so she denied it. The second one I'd like to discuss is rationalization. Rationalization is when our mind comes up with rational explanations and logical justifications to our shortcomings. Instead of admitting we may have succumbed to failures in one of our goals, our mind cooks up these rational explanations that cushion our self-esteem. I was just unlucky that the one topic I didn't study was brought in the econ test. I would tell myself every time after getting my econ grades back. The third one I'd like to talk about is compensation, which I think is more mundane and more closer to home. This is where we exaggerate a positive trait of our own identity as a response to an unpleasant trait, often an indirect one. Think of this: a not so physically gifted student leans more to academics to reinforce his sense of self. Now, these mechanisms may sound absurd. How can a mother refuse to acknowledge the diagnosis of experts? But think of that one time you willingly refuse to listen to the critique of someone on your behavior or on your decisions simply by ignoring them. Think of that time you postpone that due assignment up to the last day by simply refusing to think about it. From my experience, I know that these mechanisms can be harmful, but not always. Sometimes they can also be helpful. From my experience as a year one, I came from a background where I was always the top performer, the gifted kid. And so I came to LA knowing that I would thrive in the presence of equally gifted individuals. I gladly took up what I thought was the most challenging course LA could offer. You see, growing up, I dreaded, for as long as I can remember, one concept: gifted kid burnout. While in the first few weeks, everything was going well, as time progressed, I succumbed, and my grades started plummeting. I realized that, believe it or not, the issue was not that I was not as intelligent as I thought I was. The real issue was these mechanisms that I was using to convince myself, in fact, I was intelligent as I could ever want to be, as intelligent as I could ever imagine to be. Be it be denying the reality, be it be rationalizing my poor grades, or even compensating for other areas of my life. I acknowledge these mechanisms, and once you acknowledge them, you learn how to fight against them. But sometimes they're fine. It's okay that I rationalize that small rejection from an opportunity that I got. It saves me from the obsession and sadness that usually comes with a small defeat. It's okay that I decide to compensate my poor grade in math with studying more in chemistry. In every case, I'm making a conscious decision, separating myself from my own sense of identity, and make a decision that is aware of the long-term effects of these mechanisms. My call to action for you today is to note on these mechanisms in your day-to-day lives, to note how they come to play in your decision-making and even in your habits. Some might be harmful, some might be helpful. My name is Innocent Mwendwa Wambua, and I hope you make the most out of this idea, while you still have it.